another investigation analysis, where we slide into your minds and teach you the many facts about the things that we use and that are around us in our daily lives. Today we talk about sea salt.
Hey guys, my name is Ari and this is my fellow colleague Nick. We're near the Pacific Ocean and as you can see, wonderful breeze is going through our faces right now. I'm going to be collecting some salt water here and my colleague Nicholas will explain how it got there in the first place.
So salt water starts off in rocks like these. The rain erodes sodium chloride off of these rocks and it dissolves into the water. As rocks continue to get more and more eroded, the salinity of the water increases and then you get a really high concentrated salt water. We'll be showing you how to extract salt from water.
Today we'll be turning this plain ocean water into the one thing that we put into all of our food, salt. So how do we derive this delicious substance from plain old ocean water? Well, it's as simple as boiling the water until all of it is gone and you're left with just salt. And that's exactly what we do. The salt itself is not in a compound with the water, but is just dissolved, which means it's dispersed evenly throughout it. So if you get rid of the water, you'll be left with salt. And so, how did the salt get there in the first place? Well, when rainwater in the sky mixes with CO2, it can create carbonic acid. This erodes rocks and ionizes some of their atoms. A majority of these atoms, in fact 90% of the ionized atoms in the ocean, are sodium and chloride together. And when sodium and chloride come together, they form an ionic compound. And as we all know, ionic compounds form salts. And this one just happens to form the one salt that we all love. And so, as you can see here, after boiling the water for a while, you're left with this very pasty substance at the bottom. That is salt with a little bit of moisture. When you reach this stage, salt is often left out to dry in the sun, and so what salt companies do is they'll let it dry out in the sun for days, then break it all up, and then package it and sell it. And so that leads us into the finance portion of it all. What happens with this salt and how is money made from it? Salt is an age-old industry. It has been mined for thousands of years, as it is something that everybody needs to live. And because it is something that everybody needs to live, it is a huge and sustainable industry for people to get into. Currently, in countries like the US and China, it is a billion-dollar industry because of all the people that buy it. And looking at statistics, in places like America, people consume as much as 4,600 milligrams of sodium each and every day. There has to be supply to meet this demand. In 2016, the US spent a whopping $2 billion on salt. This is no surprise, given their large population and heavy intake of salt. Salt is an industry that will never die out. Salt is something that everybody needs in their lives, and there's a market to be filled. So, whoever is selling salt, for sure there will be buyers. Now, Dr. Aryan Dwivedi will be talking to us about the effects that salt has on our body.
Sodium is an essential nutrient but is something that the body cannot produce itself. Luckily for us, sodium is found in salt. Sodium plays a vital role in the regulation of many bodily functions and is contained in the body fluids that transport oxygen and other nutrients. It is also essential in maintaining the body's overall fluid balance. Sodium in salt helps us transmit nerve signals throughout the body. It is actually an electrolyte that regulates the flow of the electrical charges moving in and out of the cells in the body. Sodium also helps control our taste, smell, and tactile processes. Sodium in ionic form in the body is vital for the contraction of muscles, including the heart, Chlorine, which is another part of salt, is present in our body as chloride ion. It works with potassium to form potassium chloride, a vital nutrient for our body. Chloride ions are also known to be present in the red blood cells and help regulate the health and movement of the red blood cells. Chlorine is also an essential part of the hydrochloric acid or the gastric juice, which helps with digestion of food and regulates the amount of bacteria in our stomach. However, with all the good effects of salt, too much salt intake has its negative effects. Excess sodium increases blood pressure because it holds excess fluid in the body, and that creates an added burden on our heart. Too much sodium will increase our risk of stroke, heart failure, osteoporosis, stomach cancer, and kidney diseases. As a matter of fact, 1 in 3 Americans will develop high blood pressure in their lifetime because Americans tend to eat a lot of junk food which contains high level of salt.
We will now hear a very heartwarming story from a family who have sadly had the experience of dealing with the adverse effects of excess salt.
I never knew that he had so much excess salt in his foods. Recently, he's been having hypertension, high blood pressure, and he's been really giving off a really bad attitude nowadays.
As we can clearly see, excess salt is no laughing matter. It's something that needs to be taken seriously, and people need to remember to take things in moderation. An extremely informative narrative. Dr. Dovedi will now speak to us about the effects that salt can have on the environment.
Salt plays a vital role in our day-to-day lives. Not only does it make our food tastier, but it also shapes the environment around us. Salinity, which is the concentration of salt in sea or ocean, affects the global ocean circulation and how fresh water moves within the ocean and other reservoirs. Water moves through the water cycle, which is a process by which water circulates from the ocean to the atmosphere, to the land, and then back to the ocean. Water in the ocean can evaporate and travel as clouds or vapor over land, fall as rain or snow, and then work its way back to the ocean through rivers, surface runoffs, or as an iceberg. Therefore, ocean plays a vital role in the water cycle. In fact, 86% of all global evaporation and 78% of all global precipitation occurs over the ocean. Changes in water cycle can also affect salinity. For example, when water evaporates leaving the salt behind, the salinity increases. However, rain and melting of icebergs can decrease salinities because the water levels increase. Comparing the size of Earth's oceans, this change in salinity may seem small, but can actually affect the water circulation on a large scale. More saline water is dense and therefore moves down towards the ocean's bottom. This water mixes with streams such as the Gulf Stream from Florida to northern Europe. The streams can carry heat and precipitation with them as well. Therefore, the more saltier water creates bigger streams, which in turn can impact the climate on a greater scale. With all the effects of salt in water, salt water can actually affect plant life as well. Salt is actually a very important nutrient for plant, but like humans, too much of salt can actually impact the plants in a negative way. For example, if plants are exposed to salt water which contains high levels of salt for a very long period of time, the salt water does not allow for osmosis to the plant tissues. It is so dense that the salt solution actually draws water out of the plant, dehydrating the plant and eventually killing the plant.
Thanks for tuning in into this investigation analysis, guys. We hope you learned a lot about sea salt, its uses, and how it affects us in our daily lives. Peace out.